Next item on the agenda is Porthcawl Harbour Return 24-25. I assume that's Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, Nigel Smith, Group Manager, Chief Accountant. The purpose of this report is to present to the committee the unaudited harbour return for 24-25, which is attached as Appendix A to the report. Again, same as accounts, the preparation of the harbour return is a requirement of the Accounts on Audit Wales Regulations 2014, and its content is set out by the CIPFA's Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting in the UK. Again, following the Welsh Government's recommendations for dates of completion of this return, the Welsh Government recommend that the return is completed and published by the 30th of June, and the audited return completed by the 31st of October. We did publish the return on the 30th of June, and it has been passed to Audit Wales. Subject to approval by the committee today of this return, it will not need to come back to the committee for further approval if there are no amendments identified by Audit Wales. Internal Audit have reviewed the return and have not made any amendments. I would take the committee to the recommendation, which is that the committee approves the unaudited Porthcawl Harbour Return 24-25 as at Appendix A.
Yeah, thank you for that. Again, thanks to the team for preparing this, the statement of accounts. I'm pleased that the commentary we've had in previous years is in the statement again as well. But just picking up the point in regards to the issues raised earlier on the harbour, I think in the accounts it raised that the council contributes £148,027 to the harbour, which obviously has gone down from last year, but there's still a significant contribution. So that's my reading of the report, or certainly the accounts. Any questions? Colin?
Thank you, Chair. On page 181 of the pack, and it's number 6 in the accounts, talks about total expenditure minus staff costs. But then later on page 183, item 3, row 6, it says this is the total of running costs such as staffing, utilities and maintenance costs. So can you just clarify whether it does or doesn't include staffing costs? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Colin. Nigel?
That would staffing costs are separately identified in row 4, so row 6 wouldn't include those again on the return.
You I'm coming from, just clarifying that issue. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, we'll amend that on the narrative.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for picking up that, Colin. Any other questions? No. Any comments? No. So you see the recommendation that we approve the unaudited Porthcawl Harbour Return 24-25 at Appendix A, subject to that minor amendment. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. We are just going to alter the agenda around just a little bit, because obviously members know my view that the meeting should last no more than 3 hours. And we did have about another 8 items to consider. So the next item we're dealing with is the annual governance statement 24-25. Andrew, is that you?
No, Chair, that's me.
Oh, it's Caris. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apologies, Caris.
No, that's fine. For the sake of the recording, I'm Caris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Housing and Change. So the purpose of this report is to present to yourselves the draft annual governance statement for the financial year 2024-25 and requesting approval and inclusion within the unaudited statement of accounts. So, good corporate governance requires the active participation of members and officers across this council. These arrangements are reviewed on an annual basis and the findings used to update the annual governance statement. This helps to ensure the continuous improvement of the Council's corporate governance culture. The inclusion of the AGS within the Statement of Accounts provides an overall appraisal of the controls in place to manage the Council's key risks and identifies where improvements need to be made. So the draft annual governance statement for 24-25 is attached for you at Appendix A of today's report. The statement describes the extent to which the Council has complied with its Code of Corporate Governance and the requirements of the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2014 and the Accounts and Audit Wales Amendment Regulations for 2018 and how they were applied in the last financial year. It also sets out how the Council has responded to governance issues identified during 2003-2004 and actions to be undertaken during the current year following the annual review of our Council framework. So there are a number of activities that are undertaken that have fed into this document for you. So this committee provides an independent assurance on the Council's internal control environment. It is a statutory committee and, as you know, consists of 8 councillors and 4 lay members. The work done by our external regulators such as Audit Wales and Care Inspectorate Wales and Estin are referred to as they undertake work on our control systems. The Council faces a range of risks as would be expected from the broad range of services that we deliver and the activities that we engage in. Risks are viewed from both a service and a council-wide perspective, which ensure that key risks are distilled down into the corporate risk assessment. That assessment sets out how the Council is addressing the risks and the mitigating actions it will put in place to reduce those risks. It is regularly reviewed and challenged both by senior management and, as you are aware, it does come through to this committee as well a number of times each year. The Council has in place robust arrangements for effective financial control through our accounting procedures, our key financial systems and through our financial procedure rules. The Council had an unqualified audit opinion on our 23-24 financial statements, and the head of the Internal Audit Service has given the Council an assessment of reasonable assurance for 24-25. Members will see in section 6 of the annual government statement an update with regards to the issues that were highlighted in the 2023-24 statement and also the issues identified from 24-25 which we will now take forward and act on. The copy of the annual governance statement that you have today is in draft form and it will be reviewed by Audit Wales as part of the work they're now undertaken on our statement of accounts for 24-25. A final version of this statement will be included with the final statement of accounts when they are presented to committee. And it's important to note that until such time as those accounts are closed, this statement remains a live document. Therefore, if anything should happen between now and the closure of those accounts, this document will be updated to reflect it. So if I can, Chair, can I just take you to the recommendations in section 9 of the report, where it's recommended that the Governance and Audit Committee approves the draft annual governance statement at Appendix A and agrees its inclusion within the unaudited statement of accounts for 24-25. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Caris. Thanks for taking us through that. Are there any questions? No questions. Are there any comments? No questions, no comments. So if we go to the recommendation then, the recommendation is, recommendation will be that that the draft annual governance statement at Appendix A be approved, and we agree its inclusion within the unaudited statement of accounts for 24-25. Someone prepared to move, please?
Move.
Thank you, Richard. Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Martin. Oh, thank you, Colin. Sorry. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you very much. The next item we are going to deal with is the item 14, the self-assessment, because I believe that obviously we've got to get that published. So if we can do item 14 next, please, because of the timing. And Alex, is that your report?
Yeah, that's me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For the recording, I'm Alex Rawlin, Corporate Policy and Performance Manager. The purpose of this item is to review the Council's draft self-assessment for 2024-25 as required by the Local Government Act 2021. We agreed the approach to developing our corporate self-assessment for 24-25 in April, and it is largely the same as last year's. That is, firstly, performance information captured through our normal end-of-year performance reporting process. Secondly, use of resources information captured in templates for each of the 7 themes in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And thirdly, governance information summarising our annual governance statement that you've just been through. The only real differences from the process from last year are this year's report also includes a section on our duty to report on social partnership activity in 2024-25. And secondly, because we've embedded self-assessment into our performance processes, we're able to include a full draft self-assessment report and accompanying performance report in the papers. We've again used our objective mechanism for developing judgments on each wellbeing objective and aim, using the red, amber, yellow, green ratings for the PIs and commitments that support them. This mechanism was agreed at CCMB and Governance and Audit Committee last year. So just to remind you, for last year, we had 7 wellbeing objectives. Under those wellbeing objectives, we had 41 aims, made up of 80 commitments that measure our projects and initiatives, and 108 performance indicators that measure our business as usual. We also agreed that each year we will challenge or moderate the draft system judgments, testing them against the performance definitions in our performance framework. This is because the corporate plan is still fairly new, with teething issues in some aims, weighting issues in other aims, and perception issues in others. We've been through this challenge and moderation process as officers through heads of service and CMB sessions, and then through Cabinet CMB a few weeks ago. The moderation process involved taking the draft scores and sense checking them against the wording and definitions in the performance framework. So in terms of upgrades and downgrades, as a result of the moderation exercise, heads of service CMB and CCMB have proposed downgrades to 3 aims, which are 2.3, improving our town centres, making them safer and more attractive, down from excellent to good. 5.5, improving flood defences and schemes to reduce flooding of our homes and businesses, from excellent to good. And 7.1, improving active travel routes and facilities so that people can walk and cycle, down from excellent to good. In the moderation process, it was felt that the system judgments fell out of sync with officer and likely member and public opinions here. This points to issues with the commitments and PIs under those aims, as well as a lack of service user perspective measures, which you've heard us talk about here before. These are all being addressed, albeit quite incrementally, as part of the new corporate plan delivery plan that was agreed by Council a few months ago for 2025-26. They're also proposing 3 upgraded scores, which are aim 1.4, supporting children with additional learning needs to get their best from their education, upgrading that from unsatisfactory to adequate. 3.5, investing in our parks and green spaces and supporting tourism to the valleys, from adequate to good. And 5.3, improve the quality of the public realm and built environment through good placemaking principles, from unsatisfactory to adequate. For ALN, it was felt that the weighting of the PIs and commitments is not right at present, and that some issues, for example the recent Estin inspections, are not sufficiently covered. For parks and green spaces and placemaking, I think the director felt we'd over-corrected since last year. She felt there was far too much in there last year. We took lots out and now there's not enough in there. So we have insufficient evidence within them. Once that evidence is included, so for example on investment in parks and green spaces and in some changes and consultations made following the adoption of our LDP, the picture felt much more positive. So then in terms of overall judgments for 2024-25, the moderation exercise did not have a direct impact on wellbeing objective scores, and they are included there in paragraph 3.8. There are 5 judgments of good and 2 judgments of adequate. The use of resources judgment remains at adequate. The governance judgment remains at good. A similar report to this one will be discussed at Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee next week. We'll also discuss it with trade unions, Town and Community Council Forum and the PSB. The report will then be translated and designed over the summer, and then we'll take that final report to Cabinet and Council in September with any of your suggestions and recommendations. So then I'll take you to the recommendations at paragraph 9 and ask for the committee's views and input on the draft judgments and report.
Thank you for that, Alex. Obviously, a very comprehensive document. Any questions, anyone? Deb?
Yeah, hi, Chair. I've got 3 questions. Apologies for the lack of camera. The bandwidth's not great today. Three questions, if I may. The first one is with regard to the announcement around Wales being a marmot nation. What thinking has now been done around the metrics to embed that as part of the wellbeing goals and objectives? Second one relates to page 323 around education. It talks about targets around ALN. Surely this is around a population needs-based assessment of what does the population of Bridgend look like, and therefore, the local authority look like, and therefore what demand needs to be met. So there's a question mark for me around the reference to targets in that. And then the third point, page 336, we talk about interventions and support in education, perhaps with exploring the involvement of youth work as part of that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Deb. Alex?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I didn't get the first point. A nation of a what nation? Sorry, we didn't hear it on this end.
My apologies. There's been an announcement that Wales is to become a marmot nation, and that will require us to think about the 8 key pillars and its implementation across all of the delivery of wellbeing. So just really interested. It's quite a new announcement. What is our thinking on that? And if not, what are we going to now do to start thinking about the implementation of that?
I think we'll have to get back to you on that one, and we'll build that into the thinking for the 2025-26 self-assessment. On the ALN targets and the interventions and support on youth work, we will speak to education colleagues and try and include that in the report before we get it off to Cabinet and Council.
You happy with that, Deb?
Yeah, fine, Chair. I'm happy to pick up at a future meeting if needed.
Yeah, thank you. Colin?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. First of all is, Alex, could you remind us the timetable around what are the committees and other forums this goes to over the course of the next 6 months? Start with there, thanks.
Yeah, this is going to Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee next Thursday. We then have the whole summer to talk about it with other people, to go to Town and Community Council, to go to PSB, to go to trade unions, for example. And then what we do is make any changes required, get the translation and design done, and then we usually take this to the September meetings of Cabinet and Council, but obviously with any recommendations this committee and the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee add.
Thanks for that. And then it's a more general question then around service user involvement. It's cropped up a few times today, and with your report as well as kind of the usual suspects in terms of the things that we do in terms of engaging with the public. Is there anything else that we could be doing that may involve an extra cost? Just for us to know in terms of things that we, as a council, we should be doing and perhaps we can't do because of the extra cost. Things that other councils do, other organisations do in order to engage with service users that we might be able to do. So if you could just give us some idea of any ideas you've got around that. Thank you.
I think generally it's probably important to say that councils across Wales have got a very similar problem in terms of service user perspectives. You know, we had that Audit Wales report last year. Since our Audit Wales report, there's been a national report from Audit Wales on the use of service user perspectives, which has been pointing to that fairly similar problem across Wales. Kate can tell you about a piece of work she and colleagues have been doing across Wales to look at service user perspectives and how we build those into self-assessment and performance reporting more generally. You'll remember, or you may not remember, we discussed service user perspectives and how we were going to improve those a couple of times with corporate overview and scrutiny colleagues, and didn't really get massively far in terms of doing something just here, in BCBC. So Kate will be able to cover to cover that in terms of the Data Cymru work. There's also work going on in Data Cymru and across Wales in terms of national resident surveys. And again, that's another thing we'll be able to get back to you on a later date.
Hi, for the recording, I'm Kate Pask, Corporate Performance Manager. At the moment we are taking part with Data Cymru and a lot of other local authorities in sort of a working group looking at quite a lot of different performance work. So from systems to performance measures to try and work on best practice and push some things forward. But working together, the WLGA are driving it as well and have input. They've set up a number of subgroups, one of which is to look specifically at service user perspectives. So to see what other people are doing, hopefully, so that it doesn't cost anything, that so we can actually share a bit of knowledge and maybe be able to just help each other get a bit more there. We did take part in the resident survey this year that's just gone. It's because it was the first year, it's hard to see where we are with that and what we can take from it, but we're doing some work on analysis of that and looking at which measures maybe we want to take forward and which streams. We did a little bit of work with COSC on a couple of key areas that we thought were important, and where they mirror what that larger group is doing, hopefully we'll get some traction there and some movement and some improvements going forward. So it is in progress, but slowly.
Thank you for that. Councillor Easterbrook.
Thank you, Chair. Just had difficulty unmuting my microphone. Thank you to Alex for the report. And one thing I've picked up on is the AIM 5.5. Just whether you can give me a little bit of clarity as to why the system score is excellent, and that the proposal is that we call it good. And in the light of that we're calling it good, I'm aware that the Cabinet meeting of next week, that the Section 19 report regarding flooding within the county borough, that is coming before Cabinet, and I'll be interested to learn what is in that report. I appreciate that there's flooding throughout the whole of the borough. We're being told that it's down to the climate change. I've even heard it sort of said that it's an act of God, and that we cannot be responsible for the rain, but we can be responsible for our water causes and preventing flooding. So I wouldn't like it to go from good down to poor. So to me, it is a borough thing. It is a widespread problem, but there are 4 areas in and around Bridgend Central, and certainly in Bridgend Central, where the Nan Kevin glass is, that has been a flood risk for the last 20 years. So my residents in Bridgend Central have been flooded twice since last September. So we are thinking that potentially that because of the flooding that's continuing and the heavy rain, that I just hope that they're not flooded again. So it's my thought as to, it's gone from excellent as a system score down to good. I really hope that it doesn't go any lower. So just if you can give me some clarification as to how are we going to take this going forward.
I don't think it's gone. It hasn't so much gone from excellent to good. I think it's more that the system is made up of that aim on the system is made up of one performance indicator, and that performance indicator is about how we process SUDs applications and one commitment, and that commitment is focused on investment in flooding and whether the investment and the work we're doing on flooding is in line with what we said we'd do, which of course it is, and that's why both of those have scored excellent. I think the decision to downgrade that to good, I think, is more about perceptions and the view on that aim as a whole. So if you read the explanation of that aim, I think you would probably say that the one commitment and the one performance indicator don't really cover the full extent of that aim. And if you looked at perception across the borough, exactly as you said, with those flooding incidents, you would think that does fall out of step. And that is exactly the point of this moderation exercise. If we feel that actually perhaps the PI and the commitment aren't really enough to demonstrate that aim, and actually perception across the borough is completely different, then we will change that for next year, change it in the report this year manually, and then change the way we measure it next year.
Thank you, Alex.
Chair, can I come back about that? A lot of things are about perception, and I certainly can't sort of show this to residents that it scored as good when I know that it's not just in Bridgend Central that have a flooding problem. I think that it's been on the press again, and it shouldn't all be about the press and social media. But I believe in Brackla that the development there, which is 10 years old, they have had problems and continue to have problems. So it is something that is becoming a problem because of climate change. But the residents, again, are being flooded constantly. And it's something that in my area, we have now got sandbags outside of residential properties as a preventative thing. But that's not what people's houses and gardens are for, is actually storing preventative measures for flooding. So reports are all well and good. Perception is another thing, but it's actually getting on with actually solving it, which is something different to what Alex does, I understand. But it is actually about preventing the flood, not just having reports or waiting for Section 19 reports to come through. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I think the issue is, as you said, this committee looks at the performance. Obviously, a lot of the issues you raise are very specific and should actually be dealt with in another place, not this committee, even though you're raising that awareness. But Alex is at the end of the process, collating and formulating the performance regime for the authorities. So thank you for that. Bayadin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alex, for the report. Just wanted to check, do we have any control over the system? And the reason for that is that while I agree that we need to moderate outcome, it's always good for comparability that we have standard metrics for measuring this sort of thing. Thank you.
We do. We have lots of control over the system. In fact, it's our system, and it's one that we made up, as well as the judgments and the scoring mechanism. So we can change those as well. I think the problem is, as soon as we change those, we look like we're changing those for a negative reason, to make ourselves look better. And we need to bear that in mind as we're making any changes going forward. I think the real main thing we need to change going forward is that where we feel like performance indicators and commitments don't really represent the aim they sit under, or they aren't sufficient evidence on the aim they sit under, we need to deal with that. And that's part of that corporate plan, delivery plan, development process that we do every year. And I think that's something we probably do need to take more seriously, start earlier than we have done before. And we have started that for this year. So we've not so long back, we signed off our corporate plan, delivery plan for 2025-26. We've reduced from 7 wellbeing objectives down to 4. They're much more balanced, they're much more sensible, and I hope that will do a lot of the job that you outlined there, rather than having to actually change the system.
Thank you for that response, Alex. Councillor Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really, I don't think the intention is to nitpick the report, and so unfortunately, it does sort of lend itself to that. I'm still concerned, and I've been concerned a couple of years now, that touching on Councillor Easterbrook's point, that the report may not resonate with our service users, a member of the public, however you want to describe them. And I've just dived in here. It may not be typical, so if it's not, I apologise. But if we have a look at, for example, page 327 going into 328, we talk about making the council an attractive place to work, and it says it's good. And we talk about a lot of things as to why it's good. But this is not just what's reported, albeit but it's reported in the press and it's reported by directors and senior officers that we struggle to recruit key positions and key staff. So planning officers, for example, is a good one, engineers, and so on and so forth. So it can't be good if it's not attractive enough to attract key staff. So, I mean, I've just gone in there, that's one I've picked up. There may well be others, or it may be the exception. And I still think that we've got some work to do to make sure that our self-assessment is, if we're going to do it, that it really does reflect, what's on the ground. It might be, it might be an incredibly attractive place to work for a certain cohort of staff. But if we're not attracting, what does attractive mean? It means attracting to the right staff to our organisation. If we're not unable to attract those, the staff that we need to be effective, or in fact just even to function, then how can we say we're good at attracting? There's things like that I think we just need to learn from. And I do understand it's a journey, and it is easy to nitpick, but we've got to make sure these reports resonate with what's actually going on.
Alex?
Yeah, I totally take the point. I think there are things in there that may not resonate, and we have to balance how we manage performance in that way. We set out our requirements at the beginning of the year. We say what we're going to achieve or what we're intending to achieve, and then we report on at the end of the year on whether we've achieved that. I think the main downside for us in particular is exactly that one we've already explained about service user perspectives. I think if we had a better balance of service user perspectives in there, you would probably see that better balance across the piece. So you'd understand that this PI is going well. We've done this many projects. We've spent this much investment. But if people still aren't happy, you would at least know that because you'd have the service user perspective. And at the moment, we don't have sufficient data in those areas. In terms of whether we're not being able to recruit means we're not attractive, I think that's probably one to take up with our HR colleagues. I'm sure they would say there are lots of reasons why we struggle to recruit. Most of them aren't about whether we're an attractive place to work or not. Yeah, I think that's all I've got on that one.
Okay. There are no one else indicated to questions.
I have, Chair. My hand's been up.
Yes, Richard, I've just seen you on my last screen. My apologies.
So I'll take that in the grace it was said, Chair. Can I just ask for clarification, Alex? Because obviously you've downgraded, as what's been said about the flooded evidence and schemes. You mentioned the word SUDS, right? Where does SUDS come into the overall theme of flooding, right? Can we have some clarity on that? Because obviously that's a planning condition, right? So I just want to know where that's drilling into. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Richard.
I am absolutely no expert on SUDS, but I understand it. As I understand it, that's about drainage when we're developing new properties. So that's about preventing future flooding on those new properties. As I say, that is the only performance indicator under that aim at the moment, and it's clearly insufficient to measure that sort of view of flooding as a whole across the borough. So we've got that commitment, which is about investment, flood schemes, whether we're on time and on target against those schemes. But as I say, I think that's probably not enough to sort of really understand the whole of flooding across the borough, and we probably need to expand that a bit.
Yeah. Can I just come back on that? I think Welsh Water are an integral part of what we're trying to do or what you're trying to do. So I think there should be discussions with them as well, because they're the main people that would discharge it.
I think we've lost the chair again.
No, you're okay. I'm here, but I'd have to
Oh,
put my camera off. Sorry, Stephen. Deb.
Yeah, hi, Chair. Just another quick comment, and it talks to point I think I made earlier on in the meeting, which is that some of the challenges here around involvement, collaboration, and engagement sit at the heart of the implementation of the Future Gens work, and I'm wondering whether a strategic implementation of that may help with some of that thinking around how we get stakeholder engagement at the heart of our decision making.
Yeah, thank you for that, Deb. Alex, did you any comment on that?
Yeah, just really briefly, we've got a couple of commitments or projects in the corporate plan, delivery plan for 2024-25, so the year we're now in, which are about exactly that, about engagement, about consultation, about how we work with service users, and lots of areas like that. They've got, that commitment has, or sorry, those few commitments have got information beneath them about the projects that are going on and what's happening. And I think if the committee are interested, our colleague Anya, who leads on communication, engagement, consultation, would be able to bring those here or to the relevant scrutiny committee.
Thank you, Alex. I think that would be useful, just having a short presentation. Are there any other, there are no questions, any comments? No, if we go to the recommendations, then the recommendation is that I think we note the draft self-assessment 24-25 in Appendix 1, supported by the performance information in Appendix 2, and that the officers note the views and comments made by the committee to address issues moving forward. Someone prepared?
I'll move for the amendments, Chair, as you just said.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
Second, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No, we are dealing with 2 items, and that's it then, because I know our 3 hours is almost up. The next one, I think, is your Alex in regards to the panel performance assessment.
Yeah, and I'll be super quick on this one. It's primarily a report for your information about your committee's role in the panel performance assessment later this year. The Council is required to commission and organise a panel performance assessment, or PPA, before the next local government elections. It's an organisational level assessment of the extent to which the Council is meeting its performance requirements, so very, very clearly in line there with self-assessment. Council's commissioned the Welsh Local Government Association to coordinate and facilitate the PPA on their behalf, and the first set of PPAs will be paid for by the WLGA. We have requested a PPA in September 2025, and the on-site work will take place in the week commencing 15th of September. There are 3 stages for the PPA process, and they're set out in paragraph 3.2. The scope of what the panel are expected to explore covers the same 3 performance requirements that are used in self-assessment on performance, use of resources and governance. The Council is required to produce a scoping document setting out its own priorities for scrutiny and challenge, and that scoping document has been drafted and will be considered by Cabinet next week. The panel membership is not set out in there, sorry. The panel membership is also being taken to Cabinet next week. When on site, the peers would wish to meet a selection of individuals and groups, and the panel will interview the Chair of Governance and Audit Committee and potentially other members of GAC2. Governance arrangements for the PPA are set out in the Act, and decisions can be made by Cabinet or Council on the appointment of the panel and the response to the report of the panel performance assessment, and we've proposed that Cabinet make these decisions, which will be considered by them next Tuesday. There are also specific requirements on the Council working with the Governance and Audit Committee, including making the panel's report available to GAC, making a draft of the Council's response available to GAC, determining whether you require any changes to the Council's response, and then either making those changes or outlining why they haven't been made. The panel's report will be provided to GAC when it's been received by the Council, and that's likely to be at the end of the year, probably at the November meeting. A response will then be drafted, which should be considered by GAC or any changes or recommendations set out, and that's probably likely to be January 2026. So then I'll take you to the recommendations in paragraph 9, which asks you to consider your roles and responsibilities in the PPA process set out in paragraphs 310 and 311.
Thank you, Alex, for that. Are there any questions? No. Are there any comments? No. Alex, the only comment from me, there's no paragraph 3.9.
I'll make sure I renumber it for the for the cabinet next week.
That's okay, because obviously it goes on to affect the recommendation, because that would be 3.9, 3.10, but it's 3.10 in this report. Don't worry about that. Okay, no further comments. I go to the recommendation. The recommendation is that I think the committee notes their role and responsibilities in the panel performance assessment process set out in paragraphs 3.10 and 3.11 of this report. Someone prepared to move, please?
Move.
Thank you, Richard. Can I have a second there?
Second.
Thank you, Colin. Anyone against? No. And the last item we're considering at this meeting, all the rest will be deferred to our meeting in September, but I will speak to the officers about it because, is it September, October?
It's October, Chair, the 30th of October.
Yeah, sorry. So I'll speak to the officers about it because obviously I'm sure Colin will pick me up about the length of the agendas. So those items will go to October, but we'll have a look at the agenda length. So forward work programme, Deb?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you said, the next meeting of the committee is the 30th of October, and that was to tie in with the signing off of the statement of accounts. We've got 4 agenda items from today that have just been deferred until that meeting. One of them was the regulatory tracker, which was on the agenda anyway, so only 3 additional ones. And I think you've asked for a written report on parking enforcement. That's the only other one I've jotted down. I don't think there were any other written reports you've asked for, were there?
Yeah, it's the report we asked for on parking, the not the use of the vehicles for home use, an update, a full update actually on the Porthcawl Harbour, so everyone can understand it's where it sits and what it does and who sits on it and where it reports, and then just the final ones to hopefully sign off the 2 school issues that are outstanding. So the director needs to prepare a short report on that. So that's the issues.
Okay.
Sorry, I see. Yeah.
Sorry, Jen.
That's okay. I see Martin's got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure where else to raise this. I think this must be the right forum because I can't think of one that's better, but I'm sure you'll guide me otherwise. I think Councillor Granville touched on earlier with he said we appoint members to outside bodies in reference to Porthcawl Harbour. And by and large, those outside bodies do send reports back to us. I'm thinking of the Fire Authority and the CCR and Christchurch and those as well. But are we getting reports back from all the outside bodies that we appoint members to? And there's one that's very close to me here in Coity. You've got the Coity Walia Board of Conservators, which we send 2 members to, and that's a board which is established under the 1976 Coity Walia Commons Act. So I'm not aware that we have any oversight of that in any way, shape or form, and nor do we have members' reports coming back to council, certainly not cabinet, I'm not sure. So it's a question really, given that it's not always about the finance, is it? We're about governance as well. Where do those bodies that we send people to, how do we get an oversight of there? How do we, clearly it's an act of parliament. We've sent people there to represent our interests and the interests of those we represent. So it's just a general question, really. Is that for this committee, and if not, where would that go? Thanks.
You must be reading some of my reports on other councils, Martin, because I've raised
Thank you, Chair. Just to assure you, I haven't been stalking you, so we just must be on the same wavelength. But I'll just give you a very quick example. So see, Coity Wiley for years has been, of little interest to people in some ways, but there's a lot of development about to happen on that. And whilst we may not, or potentially happen, whilst we may not be contributing financially, we do send people there, and it will undoubtedly, what they do and the decisions they make will undoubtedly have a big impact on my residents and the wider, so, exactly as you were saying, where does that report, where do the minutes go, and how are they governed? But thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's why we need maybe Kelly to look at it. Maybe it doesn't need to go to the council because it's not a joint committee, but I think we just need to get the nub of it, Martin. I would agree with you. Sarah.
Hi, Chair. Just to say that I know included within our forward work programme, which I mentioned earlier, one of the kind of themes in that was around partnership governance. So I will just go back and check kind of where we are with that and what our plans are, and I'll update the committee in future. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that would be useful because, my major concern has always been that joint committees, I think councils form the joint committees and think they're their own sort of entity, but in reality, they're still responsible for it. So some come back, some don't come back, some get annual reports and they don't get the meetings. So I think it just needs to sort of be picked up in the round if it could be. Okay. Sorry about that. So subject to the forward work programme, obviously, I think we just, let me get the recommendation. We approve the updated forward work programme with those additional items. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll move that with the amendment, Chair.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Colin. Well, that's it. I'm not dealing with any other matters. Can I say, firstly, thank you for staying for 3 hours, 11 minutes. Obviously, it was quite a full agenda, and fortunately, you never know where some of these reports are going to take us, but hopefully everyone consider that they contributed appropriately. Can I thank you and the officers for all the work they do on this committee, and the members as well. And I now close the meeting, and thank you very much. Hopefully I'll see you in person in October.
Thank you, Chair.